Welcome to MarketWise Live, the real estate edition, the podcast that gives you the hard facts behind what's going on in real estate. Realtor Mike.Freeman, a Coldwell Banker realtor who holds an MBA in finance, draws from his financial background and his deep network to bring the most value for anyone looking to buy, sell, rent, or invest. And welcome back to MarketWise Live. This is David Yaz, the Boston Podcast Network, here in our Westwood, Mass studios with Realtor Mike.Freeman. Mike, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Yeah. Well, we last talked 2 weeks ago. You were wearing the exact same thing. What's up with that?
I have a rotation.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. We sometimes record these episodes back to back. And that's apropos of what I'm about to say, which is we had a great episode with your guests last week, and the story continues. So, Mike, if you would, remind people who our guests are and maybe what we're going to do today.
Yeah, sure. So we have the founders of Eastern Mass ADU, brothers, Yosef and David. So thank you guys for being here. The first episode went really well, and basically I want to continue the conversation and look at it, start off by looking at it from the perspective of you have somebody who calls you up, you've never spoken to them before, and they get you, Yosef, typically?
Yeah, I'm the one who's always answering phone calls, text, emails, whatever it is.
Okay. So I'm the new customer. I call you up and I say, I heard something at a cocktail party about ADUs.
Sure.
What are they? From the conversation, it seems like something I might be able to do and benefit from.
Yeah, what's it? Well, I'm Yosef. What was your name? Because often they usually go, hey, I want an ADU. Can you tell me what's possible? And I go, whoa, let's slow down. What's your name? Nice to meet you. Where are you from? Where do you live? And that gives me the first step. If I'm new to my computer, I can type in their address, kind of get a look at right on the phone call. But the next steps are really just talking them through the process. And for us, that starts with, what's the use case? What's making you think about this? Often we'll hear, I'm just looking for possibilities. And then maybe down the line we say, well, my grandmother, she's thinking about this, or she's down the line, I might want to bring her to the house. And so that's a good kind of understanding of what are they looking for this ADU for. And then we schedule a site assessment. So we do most of it on our end online, and we can use the GIS mapping software that each town and municipality has to look up all the constraints that your lot might have and see if your property is going to be a good match for an ADU. And I would say over the 100 site assessments we've done over the last couple of months, really 95% of properties can build an ADU in some sort of fashion.
And we talked about this in the first episode, but you just made me think of this. So the law says that you're bypassing local zoning, but I think you said this, Dave, that you still have to be within the setback requirements, right?
Yeah, so that is correct. A lot of what Yosef's talking about when he's looking at the GIS data, he's looking at local zoning. That includes setbacks. It includes things like wetlands and wetland buffers. It includes groundwater and surface water protection districts and any other zoning constraints that might come in, whether that be parking, whether that be septic. So you still have to meet all those restrictions. Sometimes that could mean that we can't do a detached ADU per se. Maybe we have to do an internal conversion or an existing structure conversion. But when we go and we do a deep dive on someone's property and during our free site assessment process, we are able to then give them all the options because we do that upfront work. And when we're doing those options, we're keeping it within the by right category, meaning that we don't have to apply for a variance.
Okay, that makes sense. So there are cases then where you would have to apply for a variance even with the new law.
Yeah, or honestly, there's cases where, again, this is that 5% niche cases. But we had one where we looked at, they wanted an ADU, but they had too much wetlands. Okay. And the wetlands had gone all the way onto their property. And so the conservation committee in that town wouldn't have looked favorably about any type of addition. And that's how they were classifying ADUs at that point. So unfortunately, there is those 5% cases. But again, given that you have almost half an acre for many lots in Massachusetts, I mean, we can even do it on a quarter acre, even smaller than that, we can build ADUs. But again, most lots, at least half an acre, it leaves a lot of space for setback, septic, all of those different components for us to navigate around and still build that ADU.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, go ahead, Dave. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, I mean, I think that's the initial part. I think Yosef's usually our front man. He's the guy who's getting all the information and then helping set up and research that person's property. But the next step is really that in-person meeting with the client getting on site on their property, and then it leads to what we call like a pre-construction process where we're deeply vetting what they're looking for and actually building out a custom, basically building plan, a set of plans, as well as any other lot engineering for things like a septic for that person to give them a full scoped project that they can decide to move forward with if they choose.
So you both of you are going to go to this on-site assessment typically?
Yeah, typically. I mean, we try to both be there. Sometimes if the client can only meet at niche hours, then maybe one of us will go because we still want to meet with them in person. But some people's schedules depend, and we try to accommodate as much as possible.
Right. And like you're saying, sometimes there could be 2 or 3 options. There's not just one option depending on what their situation is, how much land, what the zoning is. There could be multiple options for them, right?
Oh, totally. So, yeah, in that first site assessment, we come and we say, hey, you have this big area we could place this ADU. Where would you want it? Right? If you want it all the way in the back, it could be really private, but it might add a little bit of cost to get all the site work to get back there. But that's that first conversation. Then we'll talk about timeline. Is this now that you know you can build this, is it something you want to do this month, or is it something you want to do in 3 years? Because that really depends on our schedule and our timeline. And then we talk about budget. And we say, what was your budget for this project? We give them our base budgetary numbers and to make sure that we're on track. And that's all before we ask for any money, deposit, or anything. That's really just giving us information to homeowners so they can decide what's best for them and their family.
And so I know you two you're not just building this with your bare hands. So you do have a crew of people who are sort of on call, or do they work for you? How does that work?
Yeah, so luckily what's nice about the construction business is there's like a pretty good, if you get into the community, connected group of subcontractors that we work with and have experience working with from our investment property days. And so we really utilize them. The nice thing is it allows us as a company to keep our overhead relatively low, to be able to service clients, and ultimately, like, big part of our job is just educating people on what the new law states, what they're able to do, and how that relates to their specific property, and empowering them to use that to then make the best decisions for their life. And so, like, getting back to that question, that's why, like, we don't have on-staff people, but we rely on our subcontractor base. And then there is even some things that I will self-perform, whether it be foundations or other things, where we feel like we are able to bring a really value add, and it's very important to the project that it comes out correct.
Yeah, because you mentioned before we started that you have a CSL. So actually, why don't we go into that for a second? Could you tell us a little bit more about what the CSL is and what it qualifies you to do?
Yeah, so in Massachusetts, a contractor needs to hold the CSL to be able to pull permits for projects. That's not, if you're a homeowner, you can pull projects specifically for your own home, but other than that, you can't pull any permits. So I'm able to pull any building permits for houses up to 10,000 square feet. Once you get beyond that, you need a commercial level license. But for me, I'm able to do that, and everything that falls under the International Residential Code is what you're tested on when you sit for your construction supervisor licensure exam, as well as the International Building Code and International Residential Energy Codes. So you have to know all those and all the Massachusetts amendments to those laws. Luckily, you have a huge stack of books, but you have to know how to use them, where to find the information, and that lets us design and build structures. Almost all ADUs fall within the International Residential Code guidelines, and we're able to then work with homeowners to design and build their properties, which keeps it pretty streamlined process, right? You're working with us from the beginning. We can design and then also construct that building. And also, to be honest, it's really important when you are designing something, we also can bring the idea of, hey, you want to add XYZ, you like this front porch, you want to add a second bathroom in the ADU. Well, let's also just talk about what the building costs are going to be for that.
Right.
So that we're not building something that doesn't fit your budget.
Yeah, to your point, Yosef, about making sure you're fitting within people's budgets. So thinking about the financials for a second, and that's the way my mind works.
Totally.
You must get the question, how much can I make if I rent this ADU to people? How do you handle something like that? Like, do you go to a realtor?
So frankly, I mean, my background was before asset management, and even in asset management, there's a lot of underwriting. So a lot of looking at rental comps and understanding the market. But we can go to realtors. I think they're a great resource. But if it's something as simple as a rental in Sharon, we have a couple of those. We have rentals around Massachusetts. Yeah. So we kind of look to our experience and say, okay, what are the comps? What's the seasonality? Right. If you're renting in December, it's not going to go for as much as you're renting in June. Right. But we can prepare that rental analysis, is what we call it, and it's essentially looking at the added cost that you would have associated with the ADU. So if they finance it, any financing cost, any additional insurance and tax costs, and then any additional maintenance cost, that minus, or the rent minus those expenses, really gets you your cash flow. But we know in rental real estate, that's just one of the many ways you make money, right? In real estate, there's appreciation, taxes. So and debt payoff. So there's really many benefits to renting out an ADU, and especially for a single family home, it can often make the rental with a single family home much more valuable.
So because of your background in asset management and just the way you're kind of like me, you sort of have that financial analytical brain, I'll call it.
Sure.
So everything you just described, that's a service that you can provide to somebody that maybe your competitors can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we are just excited to help homeowners understand all the rights and options. And if it means deciding to rent out that ADU, we're happy to help with the potential finances associated. And so, yeah, it's a service that we provide because we want people to feel like they know what's best for them.
Right. And the finances are a huge part of that. I mean, for many people, that's the decision. That's what they're basing the decision on. Unless, to your point, like you said, you want to build something for your in-law, your grandmother. You know you're going to build something. You're not thinking about rental income. So, like you said, you have a lot of those situations too.
Totally. And I mean, that's relevant. But at the same time, right, if someone's thinking about it for their grandma, even if they're going to move the second their grandma no longer lives there, the next buyer is going to be thinking about it. So, and this is a little deeper into the financial point of it, but you'll really appreciate this as a realtor, right? Let's say you have a $700,000 house in Sharon, Massachusetts, and that's a typical 3-bed, 1-bath house in a nicer area in Sharon. And now you put an ADU on that lot that, let's say it costs $300,000 to build. And now conservatively, you say you can sell that house for $1 million. Well, at $700,000, the buyer who's going to buy that house is going to pay about a $4,000 mortgage, right? And at $1 million, maybe they're paying $5.5, right? But if you can rent that ADU out for $3,000 a month, not only can you use that ADU income to offset your mortgage, but you can also help you qualify for that $1 million mortgage.
Absolutely.
So you can make that $700,000 house actually more affordable for the person who's buying it. It's going to act like more like a $500,000 house every month they're paying their mortgage. So it really, in some ways, enables people to get that starter home that maybe got out of their reach in the recent run-up in housing prices.
Yeah. No, I've seen that exact thing that you just mentioned. I've seen people who have, before the law passed, I've seen people buy a house that had an in-law, and they found out that they can include the income that they can expect as a rental. So, okay, I was going to ask you one other question. What else? Okay, so somebody comes to you, again, just kind of getting back to that example.
Yeah.
They've never done it before. Let's say they live in a town like Sharon where almost every house is septic. And they want to build an ADU. They currently, to your example, Yosef, they have a 3-bedroom house. They want to build an ADU that has a bedroom. What's the little trick that they need to understand, or they're going to run into trouble?
Yeah, so we look at where they are in the town. As my brother mentioned, there's a lot of groundwater and surface water protection areas. That's additional overlays that the town creates to protect where water runoff in the town goes. And so if those houses fall within those areas, they're very unlikely to be able to expand their septic. In that sense, they would need to relocate a bedroom from the main house by making a bedroom an office, and that's making a 48-inch wide opening and removing a closet. And then they can relocate that bedroom to the ADU. That's one solution, but the other solution that we're working with customers in Sharon is that if they're not in those water protection districts and they have enough square footage on their lot, they can often expand their septic tank or even build a new septic tank for the ADU specifically.
Yeah.
And that allows them to not touch the main house at all, not reallocate a bedroom, and just add bedrooms to their lot with the ADU.
Yeah, and that's what you can do in the towns like Newton and Wellesley and Needham, where they have the McMansions. You can do that, and you don't have to worry about the number of bedrooms.
Well, they also have sewer. That's the big thing, I think.
Yeah,
a lot of those towns,
true.
if you have sewer, then the bedroom constraint really falls off.
Yeah.
It's really the places where you have septic, where you have to look, do you have enough square footage in your lot to accommodate additional septic capacity?
Right.
And that's what we're working with the customers right now in Sharon, actually.
And so what you just described, so personally, I haven't seen a lot of that in Sharon where you can add to your septic. So the groundwater protection, all of the things that can apply seem to usually apply to houses in Sharon, but that's only one town.
Yeah, it's about 70% of Sharon. We've looked at it. About 70% of Sharon falls within the groundwater or the surface water protection district. So in that specific case, it can be quite restrictive to expanding septics.
Yeah, and that's where I was thinking. I use the word trick. It's not really a trick, but it's something that people need to be aware of, that if you fall into that category, regardless of what town you're in, then you are going to have to make, in that example, your 3-bedroom home. If you repurpose a bedroom to the ADU, now you've got a 2-bedroom home.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's just something people need to be aware of. And obviously you guys are very thorough in taking people through every aspect, and that's not something you're going to miss. It's something that you're going to be talking to people about so they know what they're dealing with.
Yeah, and doesn't fit everyone's needs. Some people are using every bedroom in their house, and that doesn't make sense for them to relocate a bedroom. But oftentimes we talk to people who, it might be 2 parents still living in Sharon. Their kids have moved out, and maybe they have an aging parent themselves that's then looking to move back, and they don't use one of the bedrooms, or it's already actually being used as an office. So that conversion isn't something that's obtrusive to their lifestyle, let's say, and
Right.
It makes sense.
I'm going to ask you guys one last question before I let you go. Suppose, let's say, as we know, some houses already had in-law units, so to speak. I can think of one that I sold where they had this small attached apartment, so to speak. Well, yeah, it really was. It had the kitchen, it had everything that you described. So when the new law passed, I mean, really nothing changed for that person, right?
Well, it really depends on the town. So what I'll say is a lot of in-law units in Massachusetts were not always permitted. And so really the distinction is on that kitchen. And an additional stove often adds a lot of liability
Yes.
and a lot of insurance risk. So for us, the way we start there, and this is internal units now we're speaking to, where there's already something built out in a space. We look at what has been permitted. Was the electrical pull to that stove? Was that permitted and done by a professional electrician, or was that done by their buddy? And that really changes the way the town and insurance looks at it.
Right.
And so we can go through the process of retrofitting those spaces to make sure they're legally permitted, and now they fall under this ADU law. The big difference is that sometimes the reason they couldn't permit it is because it wasn't a legal use in the zoning district. Right now, under this new law, you have that legal use, but now you actually need to bring it up to building code. So what the state law changed was what you can build. It's not how you can build it. That's still the building code. And we need to always apply to the building code because we want to make sure it's making safe, habitable places. Right? But in terms of what you can build, the change in state law now allows us to actually, in some ways, bring those places out into the open and make them safer for residents across the state.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that was you answered exactly what I was thinking. So that's really helpful. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do now is thank you guys, first of all.
Of course, thank you.
I mean, 2 fantastic episodes, and I think the audience really learned a lot about ADUs, about what you guys do specifically, and how you can help people. And I think that one thing I really like about you guys and your company is I think you do business the way I like to think that I do business, which is that you're helping people and you're guiding them through it, and you're not trying to just sell them something. You go over the finances with them. You go over whether it makes sense or not. And I like that approach. So thank you guys for both being great guests and being with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Appreciate the time.
For having us.
You're welcome. And I'll turn it back over to producer Dave.
Yes, it is time to do that segment where we learn more about our guests and more about Mike.
More about Mike.
More about Mike.
More about Mike.
More About Mike is a segment where we spin the magical wheel and come up with a captivating, compelling, provocative question for all 3 of our panelists to answer. So let's fire up the wheel. And the wheel has landed on the following question. What's a moment when you thought, yep, I'm officially an adult now? Yep, I'm officially an adult now. For me, it might have been when my mom cut the footsie parts of my pajamas off because I love those pajamas with feet. And then one day, you don't get to do the feet thing anymore, and it's really sad.
That was just a couple months ago, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you get something that works, you stick with it, and maybe I'll go back to the pajamas with the feet. Mike, do you want to take this question first, or do you want to push it, or do you want to... What's the word when they defer to the second half? Yeah. Thank you.
Even though we aren't going to have a second half, this is sort of our second half. I'm gonna defer this one over to Dave. He seemed to like this question.
Ooh, all right. Well, yeah, for me, it had to be about 7 months ago. I was blessed with 2 twin boys. So I had these 2 twin boys. Yep, they are the best. and I was holding Zane and Owen, and my daughter is only 14 months older, so she was also in the midst of something, and I was outnumbered with the kiddos, and I was like, wow, I got a lot of lives I'm responsible for, but also feeling really blessed to be
So
that father.
this was numbers 2 and 3 of the twins.
Yes, number
Wow.
2 and 3. So we went from double team to going to a zone.
Zone, yeah, you got to go to zone defense.
Yep, and that hit me. I was like, wow, yeah, no, this is legit. I'm a real dad now. I'm a real adult. This is it's not just warm up with one anymore.
Yeah, I'd say if you have 3 kids, including infant twins, that you're an adult now. I hope you are.
Absolutely.
You seem to be, for sure. We go to Yosef now?
Yeah, let's go to Yosef.
Yeah, well, mine's pretty topical to this subject. I was thinking the first time I had to pay rent. That first time that rent check came out of my account, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm doing this for the rest of my life for some type of housing cost. And ever since then, we've been excited to figure out how to make that more affordable for people in Massachusetts. So this ADU law really works well with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually one of the two. I guess people usually get their first paycheck before they get their first rent check, and they're like elated at the paycheck, and then the rent bill shows up, and you're like, oh boy. Yeah, Mike, you might remember when Drew Bledsoe was the quarterback of the Patriots and the talk of the town back in the 90s, and he tells a story about how he kept calling. Back then, if you wanted like an update on your account, you can still do it now, but you could call the 1-800 number for like Bank of America, and your balance is, for me, it's like $3.50, but he kept wanting to hear that it said like $190,000 for the first paycheck.
I do. I remember that. And I also remember, you may remember this, is he said he used to be driving around and he'd see like there'd be $100,000 check like up in his visor. And he's like, oh, I better deposit that.
Yeah.
I don't have that problem.
Yeah, I've yet to have that problem either. But Mike, how about you? I'm sure you and I, it was also just like 7 months ago, right?
Of course,
Okay.
of course. So mine is the first time I was able to walk into a bar legally. When I turned 21, well, I turned 21 a few months before my friends did. It was my birthday so early in the year. But I think the first time I was able to walk into a bar legally and show my license and say, I'm 21.
Yeah.
I can have an alcoholic beverage. I was like, I'm an adult now.
It's a great feeling, but if you were like me, I still got a little nervous every time I got carded, even though because it's the residual feeling of if you tried to get in with a fake ID. Of course, I would never do that. Never in a million years.
Well, then there's the really feeling like an adult when we don't get carded anymore, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, you'll know that in about 10 years, probably.
Yeah, it's going to take a while. But you're right. That's actually another. No, see, that's not when you know you're an adult. That's when you know you're old.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there we go. No distinction there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike and I walk into a bar now, and like say you're walking into like, I don't know if it's Fenway Johnny's by Fenway Park or someplace. There's a line there, and they're checking IDs, and it's always the same thing. The check ID, check ID. They look me in the eye. They go, "Yeah, you're good. Go ahead."
I know. That's
Right?
it's just embarrassing.
I know.
I've been places with my son, who's now 23, and they'll card him and not me, and I'll look at the person, but what about me? Like, no, you're fine.
Yeah, Dad, you're okay. Yosef, David, do you want to, I believe, Yosef, you do the honors for this. You want to tell people how they can learn more about your company?
Of course, yeah. So we're easternmassadu.com, Eastern Mass ADU on Instagram, Facebook, all the social media. And then my number is 339-364-1873. Give me a call, and we'll come out and give you a free site assessment.
Excellent. And Mike, if you would remind people how they learn about you and get in touch with you.
Sure. So you can call me anytime, 617-759-1513. My email is mike.freeman@nemoves.com, and check out my website, mikefreemanhomes.com.
Thank you, Mike. David, Yosef, hope you had fun. You are always welcome back here at Pod 617 Studios. Did you have fun?
Oh, yeah. The best time.
You guys are great.
You guys are awesome. Thank you for listening to the show. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your pods. You can also find it on YouTube and see how handsome all these guys are. We will see you next time. Thanks for listening to MarketWise Live.